episode of Unveil. My name is Nicole Bozil, and on this platform, I interview women of color on discovering the beauty that lives and lies within them. We also take a closer look through their eyes on their interpretation of what they define as beautiful. Being able to push life into this world is really one of the most breathtaking elements a woman can carry out. My guest today, Daneita Blalock, knows this all too well because her work as a doula teaches families that they have a voice and they are their greatest advocate, not only for themselves, but for their baby and future. To me, a doula not only is there to be an additional support lifeline, but they are also there to prepare you to fall in love for a lifetime. So without further ado, Daneita Blalock.
Hey, how are you? Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so let me give a little backstory. So a couple weeks ago, I attended one of my very close friends' baby shower. And, fate has had it where Daneita sat right across from me at the table.
Yes.
And she had mentioned to me that she was a doula. So I'm like, my brain goes like in like fast, like flojo mode, like, oh my God, she's a doula, she's a doula, she's a doula. And so I was just so intrigued because I know eventually once I want to have children, I am considering wanting to have like an at-home birth. But I know that looking everything up and researching things, and Daneita, you can now break this down for me for my first question, because there's a difference between doula versus midwife, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So what is the difference between being a doula versus a midwife?
So I would say just being a doula versus a midwife has to do with midwives pretty much cater more so to the medical process of giving birth versus a doula is more the emotional side. So we're more preparing, educating, teaching you how to advocate versus the midwife who comes in and she gives you more of, okay, we're checking on the baby, making sure baby growth is correct, measuring all things that are medically happening to the body as you proceed forward in your pregnancy. So I think that's one of the bigger things. Midwives do provide that emotional support. We have some really great midwives, but on that basis of a continual support mentally to prepare for the baby is the doula's part.
Okay, but does the midwife, is she able to perform the birth?
Yes.
Okay, that's
yes. What. Yes. So the doula scope of practice is we're not able to give birth, right? We're not able to actually physically deliver you. So that's where the midwife comes in. She has those privileges and rights to actually give birth and then, document the birth. And so you can have your birth certificate and all of those things.
Right. Okay. So going back to now you being a doula, yeah?
Yes.
The choices that I feel like the choices that we make can be deeply rooted in like childhood experiences, right? Like our lifeline of like how it connects to us as being like the purpose of like our life, right? When we get into like adulthood, right? And so you have been a doula for 4 years.
5 years, yep.
5 years, which has resulted in how many families now?
I'm at 100. I made that 100 mark. Yes. So yes, I made that 100 mark. I'm so grateful.
So break it down to us. At what point within your journey did you feel called to this being your purpose?
That's a very good question. So my own experience, I'll be honest. So I suffered from what they call polycystic ovary syndrome. We call it PCOS, and it led to issues with infertility. I wasn't diagnosed until I was later in my life as far as having a childbirthing in that area. But I believe that I was dealing with it even in my teenage years, right? Oh, wow. So I suffered multiple miscarriages, multiple losses, multiple giving birth early. So just not having babies to term. And so when I got married to my husband and we started to try for a family, that's what started to happen. I was pregnant with twins, lost that, was having a multiple birth pregnancy, lost that. And I just remember during that last pregnancy that I lost, like, it's already hard enough to want a baby, right? Yeah. To want to have that moment. And then laying there in the process and feeling so hopeless, like, it's nothing I can do. It's nothing I can do to stop this from happening. And I just, with my belief in God, and I know everybody doesn't believe that way, but for me, my belief in God was like, this can't be the end of me, right? This cannot be all that's to me. So I did lose the pregnancy. I did lose the kids at that point. But as I healed and I did the work, I was just like, there has to be something more to this purpose, right? Because sometimes when we go through things in life, it's not meant for us. It's meant for the people we're meant to help that's going to come along in that journey. And I think God really showed me that I did have to do the necessary work to heal physically, because that was a lot on my body. And then two, to mentally and in my marriage. But I wanted to do the work because I wanted to turn around and give the service back to women that I needed during those moments. And so I just wanted another woman to never feel alone, to never feel like there was a stupid question, to never feel like she's overlooked. I did have good providers, but it took me a couple of changing providers until I got to a good provider when this experience happened, because there have been other experiences where I was left to bleed and I was hemorrhaging, and I would go to the hospital and it would be like, I couldn't even stand up because there was blood flowing down my legs. And I would get told, oh, you're a plus size woman, you know, y'all bleed heavy. Oh, you're Black. Oh, and just sent away. And so I just said, from my experience collectively, I was determined that I was not going to let another woman go through that. So I found the opportunity to be a doula. It kind of fell in my lap. It kind of gave it a name, because I was like, I'm showing up for everybody's delivery. You know, I'll be the sister, I'm gonna be the friend, however I got to get in there. But I ended up reading the article and it gave life to what it was really called. And so I was like, oh, that's it. I'm gonna be a doula. And then I started researching it because that's what I was doing, you know, and it just, like I said, it gave a name to it. And then just more and more, as I went to births, for a person who couldn't even go to the doctor's office, to sit in the doctor's office to hear a baby cry just triggered me, right? But to be able to be in the delivery room, you know, I've even had a moment to be in the same hospital where I gave birth. So just having those moments, it really shows you that with the power of doing the necessary work, you can heal and turn what could have been like this tragedy, you can turn it around to have a greater purpose in life.
Oh my gosh, that is a word. Like, you really shifted your energy, you shifted the fact of what you experienced, and you put all of that power back into that same situation. That is,
Yes.
that's wow, Daneita. That's absolutely amazing. And now going into my next question, because of what you had shared with us about your experience, right? Um, I had looked up some information, like from the CDC, and I had seen that home births had a percentage increase in the year 2020. And it rose by like 22% to their highest level since 1990, accounting for 1.2% of all births last year compared to 1.3% in 2019, right? And I'm gathering that those numbers, because it was in 2020, was possibly because of just COVID and the shutdown, that people were just making other decisions to say, you know what, I'm just going to have an at-home birth. But I want to specifically focus on African-American women, because there was also conversations about, and that I've also seen and read, where African women being under medical care are not believed to their pain, right? Or to anything that's happening to them, because they, you know, for some reason or another, like as someone said to you, they think that, oh, you're this, you're that, you should be able to have the strength to deal with the pain, right?
Right.
Have you seen a rise within African-American women wanting at-home births due to experiencing institutional racism from the healthcare system?
Absolutely. I've just seen African-American women wanting something different, period. Right. So African-American women are 2 to 3 times, and like in sometimes certain cities, almost 3 to 4 times more likely to have death or have medical complications
3
due
to
to
4
our
times?
And then for a woman that's educated, so say you have like your bachelor's, or like I have clientels that are lawyers and some of them are doctors, you're even more high risk because you are that. So when we think about being educated versus our white counterparts or our other counterparts, and then as a Black woman, the odds you would automatically assume from those statistics are against us. And that's how it is that it's a lot of racism happening from our ancestors, from our cultures, dating back from slavery, where women, African American women, are meant to endure more bodily pain than our other counterparts. And so when we continue to live out that heritage like that and are institutionalized by racism in the healthcare system, it really brings about this desire to say, what do I have to do so that I can have a better outcome? Right.
Right.
And so, to speak to what you were saying about home births, yes, it has been on the rise since COVID took place. A few reasons was because doulas were no longer allowed to go into the hospital settings. They were restricting our
Oh,
presence in the hospital settings. And so, with restricting our presence in the
yeah.
hospital setting, it's not just the doulas. A lot of my families talk to me about their husbands and their partners are not even allowed in. If they tested positive for COVID, you weren't allowed to have a partner or a doula in the presence. And so here we are again, leaving our women vulnerable, alone, and not having the necessary support and that they need. And I think too, like when people ask me, well, when they have a hospital birth, they say, well, why do I need a doula when the nurses are going to be there? Well, there's a ratio when it comes to the nursing care, right? So maybe in most hospitals, it's like 2-to-1. So she has 2 patients to 1 nurse, right? But when you're having that, she still has to chart. She still has to go in between you 2 patients. She may be helping to facilitate. And I tell people the doula is the one-on-one dedicated care just to you as the patient. So my whole focus is you and your family and your partner in that moment, not going to see someone else or not, just that one-on-one attention there. So I think even in that, just like once you took out the doulas, once you took out the partners, or in those cases where there were limitations, you left them lonely, you left them alone. And not that you can't give birth alone, but who wants to do that? So much is taking process, right? So much is taking process in your body that I heard many women say to me, I can't focus on 2 things. I can't focus on 1 thing. I can't focus on that too. So in essence, I'm trying to protect me and my baby, yet I'm trying to have my body to release this baby in the right way. And it becomes a conflict. And so a lot of times that's what we saw, those home births, because if I'm in my home setting, I can regulate who's here, who's not here. I can say, I want my partner here, my mom here, my doula here. And I don't have to say, well, no, I can't have you here. So I feel safe. And if you think about it from that standpoint, your home is your safe haven for a lot of us. That's our safe space. This is the energy we've created for our homes. This is the home we've decorated. This is the home that we chose to live in. And when you think about that, it actually brings a sense of comfort and peace. And then it helps to break down those barriers so that you can focus on your body and bringing your body through that pathway to that baby is delivered.
Oh my goodness. When you're at home though, and you're doing this birth, what are some of the practices that you do? Because you're not, I'm assuming you guys don't give anyone anesthesia to
Right.
medicate them, right?
No. Right.
So how has that I guess that element of like giving birth been a bit easier for women? Because I guess it's all mental than anything else,
It
right?
is. It
Because it's
is.
like, I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, oh, I can take my menstrual, but I know that's a whole level of pain versus like having a baby, you know?
Right.
So like, how do you navigate that being a doula to saying, hey, I mean, I know there's breathing exercises, but what else is there as far as other elements for someone who's watching to be like, oh my gosh, I need anesthesia. Like I need it. I have to have it, you know, like to say, you really don't need it. Or do you?
And so I think for me, that's the conversations we need to have. And so even as a doula, like I tell people, when you think of a doula, it's like automatically natural, homeopathic, like, no, that's it. But I tell people that for me, it's more about education, right? So that you can determine what's going to be the best journey for you. I tell people for every discomfort is a comfort measure. Right. And so the more that you educate yourself, that's just like when you open the door and it's dark and it's pitch black. If you've never been there before, you're going to move very hastily. Like, wait a minute, let me just see what's going on. Can I find a light switch? What's going on? But when it's your house, I know for me, I walk in, it's pitch black. I'm still walking into the kitchen because I know the way, I know the route, I know this space. And that's the same thing with birth. Once we teach you the space that you're going to be in, once we teach you the concepts of labor and birth, you can eliminate and break down those walls and barriers of fear, right? Once we look at birth as not a medical procedure, but a natural process happening to our bodies, right? Like you said, my menstrual, that's a natural process. We expect that thing every month. We be like, hey, Flo, where you at? What's going on? Why you ain't showing up? Is you
Right.
what? We got to talk,
Right.
right? So if we start to look at birth as a natural process that's going to happen to our bodies when our bodies are ready, then you'll begin to take more hold of that. And the more truth you know about it and the more options you have, the better you can choose. And so that goes back to home birth. Home birth is your setting. So one of the big factors, like I mentioned, is just your comfort zone. Takes away from that fear that's like, hello, it's been 2 hours, you should be this, and more gives you that where you can walk around, you can eat, you can, watch your favorite movie, you can get in the bathtub, you could get in your shower. I'm big about positive affirmations in the house. Like wherever you are, you can look up and see a positive affirmation. So it gives that more home sense, that it gives people comfort. And when your body is able to relax and it's not in fear, then your body dilates and it opens beautifully.
Oh, wow. Do you find that within the home birth that it's more quick because it's at home versus, because I believe with anesthesias, it slows it down, does it not, a bit?
Well, and sometimes with anesthesia, yes, you can have a delay, right? But with home birth, yes, we kind of let the natural process and let your body tell us when it's ready, right? And so with that process, it can be faster because you're feeling more, right? And so your body is more inclined to do the things that it's doing on its own, but it could be overall the same process. I have many moms that give birth at home naturally, as well as in the hospital without any medication. So it's an option and then it's your choice, but definitely I've seen kind of it be about the same. When your body can feel more and you're letting it do what it does, yes, that baby gonna come.
Yeah.
It's coming regardless.
What happens in situations where we are losing, it goes in the opposite direction? Do we now have to go to the hospital because at this point, or where does a midwife come in and understand what's happening, and what happens at that point for everyone that's in the room, the doula, the midwife, husband, whoever, when it comes to a point where like, oh my gosh, the baby's losing its heart rate? Like how quickly does that change, and where do you kind of shift to kind of making sure the baby stays alive,
Right. So with home birth, I know a lot of people think about that. That's a lot of conversation between partners and whether choosing the right journey, if home birth is the correct journey for you. Hence why we have like birth centers to still give you that home birth concept versus just going straight to the hospital. But most times when midwives for the home births that I've done, we try to make sure we're in a close proximity to a hospital. So we don't want to do a home birth and then the nearest hospital was 2 hours away, right? We always want to make sure that we're providing a safe haven all around, even though our ideal goal is you're going to give birth at home, right? But in the event that something happens or something moves forward, we also want to make sure we can have a safety plan in place. So most people make sure you're delivering close to a hospital, because that way we can call the ambulance if necessary, or we can transport you to the hospital if needed, right? So that's part of our safety plan that we talk about. There is monitoring of the baby. We just making sure baby is okay. However, if we get to a point or a place where things are not going and transpiring as we hope, then we do take the necessary precautions to transfer to the hospital. And so a lot of times when we transfer to the hospital as a doula, I go to the hospital and I still continue my services there.
Oh, perfect.
The partner can go with us at the same time. Usually the midwife is with us as well, because she has the progress of how this labor has been going and where we kind of see that there may have been coming an issue so that we can get mom. There are times that you still can deliver at the hospital naturally. Is not an indication of an immediate C-section. It's just that there was some further things that needed to take place in order to ensure the safety of your delivery. And so we do tend to stay with the families there at the hospital until baby is delivered, because that is our goal. That's our task. So we do that.
Yeah. Speaking of like your services, I think we get so focused on before the baby gets here, right? So we're like, we getting a baby shower, we're doing a gender reveal, we're like getting prepared for the room. What color do we want to paint the room? But I see that you also service post-birth, right?
Yes.
So, which I feel like that's definitely a greater presence than, I'm not saying that it counters the other, but I feel like there's more of a greater presence being there after than before, because the stories that I've like listened to when like postpartum depression, hair loss, the fact of like this kind of sadness of thinking they can't put their child to nurse on their breasts, you know, all of
Right.
these things, even the psyche of like how quickly your body can snap back, like all
Right.
these things that are just after post birth. Where does a doula, what's the added benefit or reward for a doula being there post birth with the newly parents, mom?
So I think you're referring to the fourth trimester is what I love to call it, the one that we
Oh, the
tend to
fourth
forget
trimester.
about. So we
Yeah.
call it the fourth trimester. The fourth trimester is just that, from delivery up until 8 to 12 weeks afterwards, right? One thing that COVID brought about is showing us like the mental health aspect. I think for everyone, not just birth related, but I think mental health with COVID came full force, and it brought validity to the mental health aspect that we so try to like put aside, right? But it really brought forth what people needs are. And we also learned in that space that moms are having postpartum depression. So postpartum depression can take place at any point until the baby turns 1 year of age, right? And postpartum just does not affect moms. It actually affects partners as well, because I've had a family where the dad actually scored for postpartum depression when mom didn't. So
What?
we take that for granted that the fathers are not feeling the transitions that take place from bringing this new life into the family as well. And so that fourth trimester is important, because I think we say, hello, here you are, welcome to motherhood, right? So we give you this new label to put on your chest and say motherhood. But then we start attaching all these things. So breastfeeding, bottle feeding, formula feeding, snatch back, let me put on my bathing suit, or I got to rush back to work. And once you start to attach all these things that are not necessarily meant to be attached to motherhood, then you begin to think you're failing at motherhood when those things break off. And so I think we need to understand it's two different concepts. You are a mother, yes, but these are other options that are in your life that you can really change and do something about, right? So making sure that you don't put the pressure on yourself to be snatched back within a certain amount of time, but giving you the healthy components to make sure that your body comes back to its normal setting within this time frame of healing, right? And so we take that opportunity to teach, to give you time to rest, time to nurture your baby, time to have that experience to chest feed or breastfeed, whatever you want to, you prefer, or if it's formula feeding. So taking away those stigmas that come with that it's not necessarily meant to be attached to you. We're worried, like when I tell people when I come in, I'm worried about what is the feeding option here. If that's chest feeding, then we're going to support breastfeeding and chest feeding. If it's formula feeding, then I'm going to teach you how to properly make the bottle, warm the, make sure you're doing the proper ratio, because my goal here is not to stress you out so much that it takes away from you focusing on this healing process, right? And so I've heard many people say that like that fourth trimester is like being taken into another country and you don't speak the language.
Wow, that is
How
a
are
great
you supposed to,
analogy.
right? How are you supposed to survive? How are you supposed to order food? How are you supposed to ask for what you need when you don't speak that language? And so having that doula comes in and kind of, like I tell people, bring back the sense of community and collaboration, right? So community is coming in, like I'm sweeping the floor, I'm washing the dishes, I'm loading the dishwasher, those things that you don't have to worry about, so that you can take your time, energy, and focus on you, baby, and your relationship.
Right, right.
And so that's what that postpartum doula is, helping with that services that in your home, like even collaborating, like building your confidence as a mom. What do you think? The baby's fussy. What do you think? What could it be? So it's helping you to identify your baby and to identify what works best for your baby so that you can feel confident about being a new parent.
Right. It's like pretty much you're learning how to ride a bike. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's new to you. So it's just like, okay, how do you feel? And that makes so much sense, because I think we lose sight of trying to, which is where maybe possibly in this, you could quote me if I'm wrong, where the depression comes in, where it's just like you said, that you feel like you're failing, but it's just like, how do I connect you back to this to say, this is a part of you? You get what I mean? Like this baby is a part of you. So I need you to join in and communicate with me to say, how do you see it as, like, because now this is part of motherhood in so many ways, of saying, okay, if he's crying, then he's hungry. If he's crying, then he needs to go to bed. These things that's new to them. An additional, when you're speaking of stigma, the conversation around women having children over the age of 40, appears to be less scrutinized. I feel like it has, but the reason why I think that it has is I'm suspecting that society has come to this understanding that women want to be able to live their lives and as well as have a level of stability, you know, because bringing a child into this world, that's just like a whole nother care that you need to be responsible for. So can women over the age of 40 have at-home births? And if yes, are there higher risk of complications due to their age?
So I think that's a question that we can unpack. So to what you said first, yes, women are choosing to have babies later in life. We are chasing careers. We have different paths in life. I've even heard like women share their stories with me that says that I didn't think I was going to find love. So for me, or find that person that I wanted to do life with or have a family with. So to me, once that person finds it, then the opportunity of like, oh, I'm never going to have kids, now it comes back on the table again, right? And so our system says that one time that you're over 35, that comes up all of these challenges of being pregnant after 35, right? Down syndrome, stillbirth, all of these things, genetic disorders, complications. But I have a lot of patients that have given birth over 40 and are just completely fine. Right. So I think what needs to take place is that if we can start to change our wording in the society as well as in the medical institution, because any mother that's over 35 is considered a geriatric pregnancy. And it's like you're considered automatically high risk. First of all, we need to change geriatrics because that refers to our elderly and our baby boomers, and that is not us.
Right.
So first, let's start by changing geriatrics first. Okay. So like if we want to say advanced mother or a seasoned mother or whatever we want to change it, we need to find another word versus geriatric. So then I tell people it's time to, because being over 40 in this medical institution then makes you high risk. So then I think we need to find out what our options are, talking to our providers, because if we can get genetically tested and there's nothing wrong, or there are no other complications other than them saying that because you're 40, then you need to look into your options of a proper midwife and say, well, my desire is to have a home birth. I've done the genetic testing. I've done this. And so far, there is no other complications that exist that will prevent me from having a home birth. Because home births and things are for low risk outcomes when there's not all of those complications. And how the medical system see it is that just the age enough is enough to be high risk, right? So I think actually sitting down and exploring your options. I know many midwives that have delivered moms that are over 40 and there's no complications, beautiful birth, mom gave birth at home, nothing. It's just exactly what she wanted. But I think as women, we need to know our options so we can best facilitate the journey that's going to work for us. And once we don't explore those options, or we hear, oh, you're high risk, that doesn't necessarily, what does that mean? So asking the appropriate questions. Okay, so are you telling me that if I get the testing and the genetic testing says all is well, then I have these options? And so the more you know your options, the better you can choose for yourself and for your baby and for the journey you want to have. So does you being 40 knock you off from having a home birth? If there's no other risk factors involved in finding the right provider, yes, let's do it. But if there is, then that's not necessarily a no and that you're defeated. Now we have to find out what other options. Maybe a birth center is what best for you, or maybe giving birth in the hospital, but with a doula and a certified nurse midwife, because the midwife has the more holistic approach. So I think it's looking into those options and finding out what works best for you and not giving up hope. If you're 40 and you want to have a baby, the infertility world is booming. So for me to have experienced that, I know so many women that are at 35 preserving their eggs because they're not ready. So they're preserving their eggs, they're reserving, they have embryos, and we have all of these things, right? So we just don't want to give up hope on our opportunities to still yet feel that sense of control over our bodies and our options. And so therefore we need to do the work.
Okay. Oh my goodness. So speaking of work, Daneita, because you've been work, as Rihanna's song would say, you are just taking care of us, making sure that us as women are like being cared for. How does Daneita care for herself? What beauty products are you using day to day? What's your self-care?
So for me, my self-care looks a little bit it looks a little bit more kind of all over the place, right? Because I am a big fan of taking care of my body because I do use my emotional being, I do use my physical being with helping in the birth, right? And on top of that, I'm a mom, right? And I'm a wife and a friend and all these things. So I really do. I love my manicure, my pedicure, my manicure, pedicure time. I'm be in the chair. I may be leaning. I may be sliding out. I'm like, leave me soaking in the hot water because I need to have that moment just to unwind, right? I need to have that. For me, my beauty, I use, I think it's called Body by Bella. It's a coconut oil. I love that. Like I said, I suffer from polycystic ovary syndrome. So there's a lot of extra hair and just those things as I'm nurturing my body back to wholeness. There's a lot of things that I'm overcoming. And so for me, I have dry skin and I have the different changes in skin because polycystic ovary syndrome does come with a hormonal imbalance. And so with that hormonal imbalance, I have dry patches on my face. I have, unwanted hair growing. And so I have to maintain, it's not an image that I'm maintaining what makes me feel good as a woman. And so with that being said, I have to use like the coconut oils. I have to use a great daily moisturizer. And I'm learning as I go along what's working best for my skin, for my body, so that I can gracefully age into this woman that I desire to be.
Oh my goodness, Daneita. Oh my goodness. Love it. What is a favorite feature of yourself and why?
I would say my heart, my physical feature, I maybe say my smile, but most importantly, my heart. I believe my heart is in the right place. I believe it starts there. Because when you're serving and giving from your heart, I think people see that, right? From the inside out, that people see that. And I think that, sometimes we have all these ideas of what beauty really is, right? And so I think that I do want to be, when someone looks at me and they be like, oh, she's a beautiful person, but I want them to say she also has a beautiful spirit. She also has a beautiful heart and a beautiful soul, because those things go further to me than physical beauty. I can buy some lipstick and some eyeshadow and beautify myself. Yes, of course I can. But at the end of the day, I have learned that there has just come such a beauty with being pure at heart or having the right intentions. And so that's what I love more than anything. That has driven me to have a heart for the people, for the community, but then that's driven me to take care of myself as well, to make sure that I'm whole, to make sure that I'm doing my work for myself too, because I can't pour from an empty glass. And I know we say that, or like the glass is half full, but I have recently just experienced in my journey that the intention is for me to pour from a full glass because it's overflowing. And when it's overflowing, then there is no lack in me that I'm giving, or I'm giving my very last. So I get to a place of resentment because I'm giving from nothing, right? When you give from nothing, even though we think we're still giving something, you're not giving the best. And so I have just recently in this journey, it began to experience that I, as a woman, want to give from wholeness in my overflow, so that it's just enriching to you or to the next person.
I don't want this to end. I've been working. I don't want this to end. I guess I don't know if you want to connect that back to within my next question. What do you love about being a Black woman?
I love the versatility of a Black woman. As we learn our history and our culture, and I'm learning I'm diving even deeper into that. As I experience more of life, I'm experiencing more of my culture and of my history, especially on this journey of being a doula, like the granny midwives and the women that came before me and the momentum that they made. I realized that I'm standing on their shoulders, right? I wouldn't be here today if there had not been those women or those figures in our culture, if they had not come before us. And so that settles with me. So I love the versatility. I love the fact that I can change my hair. I could be gray, I could be blue, I could be purple. I love that I can own that. I can own that and smile and be who I am, and not just, the color of my skin. I could be light, I could be dark. I am just a Black woman, and I love me being a Black woman. And so I think that comes with so much passion, so much heart. I think too that Black women have been scrutinized and have made to believe that we're dumb, or that we're silent, or that we're mute, because of things that have transpired over the history of slavery leading up until today. But I think being a Black woman shows that I have a voice.
Yes.
that I am a person and that I am a game changer, right? So I have to continue to move forward and press in momentum and leaving the legacy. Like my pastor said something, you want to live a life where you're just not remembered, but you're missed. That your presence means so much into this earth that if something was to happen and God took you away, that you would really be missed. And so that really stuck with me and created that passion where I'm just really being thoughtful. I have kids and I think about the legacy I'm living. I think about the things that I'm doing, and I want them to be proud of me as much as I am proud of myself.
Oh my gosh, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And so last question that you can leave us off with, what is a takeaway beauty secret that you can share with our viewers? And of course, it doesn't have to be physical.
I would say making sure that we get the help we need. When you went back to talking about the mental health aspect of it, is that I think in our African-American culture in general, we look at having therapists or talking with a counselor or taking the necessary self breaks we need or self-talk opportunities we have. And just, we don't think that we need those, right? We don't think that we deserve the break, right? And so I think that for the beauty to be rose inside of you and for you to bloom into who you need to be, you need to make sure you do the necessary work that your soul needs, right? And so I think that stop foregoing that. I think for the first time I experienced like going to a therapist and I was kind of worried about what people would have thought about me, but I had some stuff I needed to unpack. And I was like, I need the tools to unpack this because I keep trying to do it on my own and I'm not coming up to what I feel like I'm getting solution in my life, right? And so I did the necessary work. And let me tell you, the difference that it made for me, it spiritually and mentally and emotionally matured me in a way that I'm forever so grateful for. So I think that I'm able to now even be a greater light in the world because I've done the work, right? And is that just it? No, it's going to have to be an ongoing protection of my peace, my healing, and making sure that I continue to do the work. I just can't leave it there. But I think it's necessary from the beauty inside of us to really grow and to blossom into who we really need to be. We need to be able to do the work mentally as well as physically.
Come on, Daneita. Give us all your handles. Tell us where we can reach you. Guys, do not overbook this lady, okay? She's gonna be spread thin. Don't spread her thin. But give us all your handles so people can reach out to you. Can people even ask any questions? They're free to ask any questions and maybe send you any DMs without.
Yes. So I do free Zoom consultations. Nice. I have really made a platform where it's a little bit something for everybody. I do mommy doula dates. So for those that just want to have the moment to help with baby registry or maybe ask questions. So I have that. So you can hit me up on Instagram for _the journey. I'm on For the Journey Birth and Postpartum on Facebook. My website is up forthejourneys.com. So you can hit me out on any of those platforms at all. And definitely, like I said, we can talk, we can chat. I do a free Zoom consultation, but definitely I hope once we're finished with that conversation, you'll know more better that you're ready to go forward with services.
Yes. But do you travel? Because you are located
I'm in Illinois. Yes, so I'm in Illinois. So traveling has become a thing for me. So we just have to make the appropriate plans. But I think that COVID taught us one thing, that virtual services work.
Yes.
I have had some opportunities to be with some families and have some discussions because like you said, some people do come to the conclusion that I've educated myself enough that I feel okay going into this process, having my baby okay, but also being connected to the lifeline. So I've had people unable to give me a call and be in another state and be like, okay, this is what they're seeing. Can you help me process it? So, and then there's other times when things happen and it's like, it works out accordingly and I can fly and be somewhere else and be with you when you give birth. But birth is unpredictable. So we do our best to manage to it as much as possible. But yes, I am in certain circumstances, if we set it up correctly, definitely able to go.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Daneita.
No, just hugs.
Amazing conversation. Oh my gosh, I learned so much from this conversation. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.